Hello, this is Steve with Pro Tools PC, and on this video I wanted to talk about making a reverse cymbal swell. I had a bit of a conundrum trying to figure out what to name the video. Obviously there's lots of different ways to phrase, reverse swell, cymbal swells, and I'm sure people kind of have their own terminology for it. It's not one of those things that's really set in stone. But the idea of it is obviously, as I phrase it, it's just a reverse cymbal swell. First, let's give an audio example of it here real quick. So it's just this cymbal track right here that kind of when the music's dying out, that's kind of coming in with that build up for the downbeat. So I wanted to look at building one real quick. So the first thing you need to do is to get a cymbal from somewhere. So that can be a cymbal pulled out of the song. It can be a cymbal sample from somewhere. In this case, I'm using a virtual instrument, so I just recorded a cymbal out of it onto a track. So whatever works for you. Something I've commonly done quite a bit on songs too is actually not to use a cymbal, but use like the first syllable of a word. So whatever the word is coming up, I take that first syllable, cut it up, and kind of do the same effect with it. So I have the cymbal sample here. So what we're going to need is two tracks. We're going to need a reverb track, which will be on an auxiliary, and then we'll need another audio track to record the cymbal through the reverb onto, and then that's the track we're going to take and do work on. So let's create an aux track and a audio track. So Control-Shift-N on Windows. So then now we would name the tracks and then do the routing. Okay, so I have them named, and then for the routing, I would just daisy chain them. I wouldn't even worry about doing buses, just outputs to inputs. So on the actual track with the crash on it, I would set the output to feed the cymbal. So let's set up buses for that. So as you can see, my buses were kind of messy. I've had a bunch of different interfaces hooked up lately, so things were kind of weird. But basically, I'm just taking common auxiliaries. Common buses. I did not create any, you could do that if you wanted to, but I just didn't in this situation. So I'm coming out on this keys bus, accepting it out of this track, and then out of this track I'm going out of a guitar comp track and into the guitar comp here on the bounce track, and then this is going out to my main output. So again, this is a pretty exaggerated, ugly way to do it, but it just shows you the process and how you can get it done. So here on the reverb track, we would instantiate a reverb. In this situation, I wouldn't want a real pretty, or worry about getting a real nice, pretty, pristine reverb. I typically don't use IRs for it. My favorite one to use for it is the Oxford reverb, but a lot of, like I said, you probably could use IRs on it. I just typically don't. I grab something like this. Now what I'm looking for is not this real wet, mushy reverb. I mean, I want a really more of a thin reverb, but with a long tail on it. So depending on what I'm doing, I'll go through a bunch of different reverbs trying stuff. So I'll go grab a Hall here. We'll try that first, see how that works. Oh, and we need to set our input monitoring and record arm the bounce track. And assuming your routing is set up right, it should go all the way through. So we do have it. And let's get this kind of set up. Yeah, it's actually pretty good for the first one I grabbed. As I said, I'll bring the size down some. I don't want a real big, giant, thick reverb. Okay, I don't quite know how that's going to work out, but let's just go with it and we will record that. And then I'll crank up the gain on it a little bit here. And then the next thing I would do is come up here to audio, well, select the clip, come up here to Audio Suite, and let's go to Other and grab Reverse. Now let's go ahead and reverse it. Shut off our input monitoring. Okay, there we go. That's close. First thing I'll do is trim up the back end of it here. What I don't want is for the cymbal swell to kind of peak and then die out again. I want to grab it and have it cut at its peak. So it would be somewhere around there probably is where I would stop it. And that sounds pretty close. So let's go ahead and take this. I'm just using copy and paste here. And I'm going to move it onto this track. I will mute out the existing one I have. And let's just hear how that sounds. That actually works out pretty well. Obviously, there's a weird gap. Yeah, we can see there's a weird gap there where the cymbal swell stops and the music starts. Now in this case, I definitely want it to be quicker, not so long and drawn out. So what I'll do is take the time compression and expansion, and I will shrink it up. Yeah, I like that better. So it's just kind of more aggressive. It's not building for so long before it finally hits. And then from there, if I know I can't hear some of this out here, I might get rid of a little bit of it. And then I'll actually come in here, whether it be with volume automation or with fades. And I'll actually, to help it build a little more, there we go. I like that. And then sometimes what I'll even do is come in here with a pan. And I kind of made this a mono track on purpose so I could kind of show this, as I will do a pretty drastic pan on it to make it feel like not only it's rising, but then it's also moving from one direction to the other. Okay, I like that. And in this case, I'd actually make it a little louder here. So I hope the video was helpful, and any questions about it, comments, anything like that, feel free to hit us back on our website, and thank you for watching.